Hey guys, and welcome to the show. So today we're going to be going back into our infinite runner. Since GameMaker has changed up a couple things with the scripting, I'm getting a lot of feedback on how to fix that. Things are a little bit wonky. So we're going to open up part 9 and it's actually going to prompt us to convert this to the new system, and then also we're going to just optimize and refactor a little bit with those scripts, because I've been looking at it and maybe it's not entirely necessary anymore. So before we jump into what we're going to be doing here, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification icon. I really do appreciate your subs and your viewership. Let's do this. Okay, so I'm here in part 9. Let's open part 9 up. Right, so we should get a pop-up here saying the project is of an older format, will need to be converted. I'm using version 231.542 or something like that. So we're going to click OK, and it's going to say, where do we want to save this? Let's go put this with the other ones. Okay, let's put it in part 10 and save. Should be really quick. Okay, now that it's been converted, if we go over to the scripts folder, open up some of these, you'll see that this changes now to this function, and then this is the name that the file is, kind of syntax, but I think calling them seems to be the same. So if we go back to our dyno, here we go. So these are all just called the same. Let's fire this up and I want to see if it actually does explode. Okay, so it's not actually exploding. Yeah, that seems fine. But let's make this a little bit easier to follow. So I'm actually going to go ahead and bring all of these scripts into the main step event. At the time it seemed to be a good idea to extract them, but you know, now I'm thinking it's not really necessary. So let's grab detect key, and I just want the code bit inside, and we're going to paste it over the usage, and I'll fix the indentation in a second. Ground check, let's grab this all, let's put it in over there. Jump check, again, grab that, paste it over its usage over there. Collision check, grab that, and where did it do that guy? So there, and set sprite was the last one. Grab all of this, and let's go back, paste it down here. So we don't need any of these scripts, so you can go and get deleted. Then let's see what we've got here. Let's fix the indentation. First good step over there. Fix this indentation. Fix this indentation. I'm actually going to show you something really cool. We can use ternaries on some of these properties to reduce the amount of if statements. I think it was around here. So it was a good example. So if duck key or duck key alt, then we're going to set ducking to true, jumping to false, and I think falling, I figured out I don't even need that one. So I'm going to save that, and then these things I'm going to change. So instead of having them inside the if statement, I'm going to say, well, what this if statement is doing is it's saying if true, then set these to either true or false, right? So we can technically replace this true over here, because it was nested in that, with just one of those. So ducking equals duck key or duck key alt. So because this will result with a true or false, easy sticks, right? We can just use it to replace the whole if statement. Then this guy, jumping false, now because he was inside the true, technically we could go ducking or duck key alt. We can say if that is the case, if this is true, then we want false or true. But technically, I'm thinking we can even go so far as to just say, and you'll see that'll go away because that's actually valid. So how this works is it's basically saying like var something equals if statement, okay, and then your question mark is true or false. That's how a ternary works. I'm going to put links in the description about how, or just like more in-depth knowledge about ternary expressions. But that's basically what it is. Here's your if statement in the beginning. So in this case, duck key or duck key alt. And then this is what you want to set A to. This is the property you want to give A if it's true. So if this evaluates to true or to false. So for example, here we can say var I equals 10. And then your statement could say, well, if I is less than 100, then we can say, you know, A is some other value, 90, otherwise it's 80. So in this case, because I is always less than 100, it'll always set, or because I is less than 100, it'll always set A to the first argument over here, which is 90. It'll never get to 80 unless we basically make that like 109. In which case it'll say, is I less than 100? Nope. So it goes to the false bit over here, and it says, okay, well, A is going to be 80. But I think we can actually just convert this even further to a simple not on those two, because that's kind of the same thing, right? We're saying that it was in an if statement that said if the duck key or the duck key alt was being pressed, then we were false. So if I invert the logic, change that to an AND, we should get away with not even needing a ternary expression, and this should work. Actually, before I clean up the rest, let's just see if that actually checks out. Okay, so jumping, yeah, ducking still works. Check that out. And our alternate spacebar works. Oh, I don't want to go inverted. Fantastic. Okay, so that little kind of refactoring using smarter kind of code saves us a whole bunch of lines in an if statement, because I mean, we want to try to limit the amount of if statements. So for example, like we've got if global game over exit, you could say and invert this by saying, you know, if not game over, then do all this code, but then all of the stuff will be nested inside, which is a little unnecessary. So we're basically saying over here, you know, if it is game over, just jump out, don't do the step event, skip over the step event. And because of that, we don't have to nest all of these ifs in ifs and then more ifs, because that can be a bit much. So just for fun, I want to see if we can use the ternary logic we saw earlier to even get rid of this if statement. This is an experiment. I don't know if it'll actually work. It's one of the things I didn't check before recording this, so excuse me if it doesn't. But we can probably say jump key equals not global inverse question mark, again ternary. This returns true or false. Here we want the true expression, and here we want the true outcome and the false outcome. So if it's not inverse, it's the true outcome, we do this one. Otherwise, we do this one. And that's very exciting. And I'm also going to do the jump key alt, and then we'll test out if it actually worked. Okay, and then we say or, we do alt, vk alt. Okay, so if we're not inverted, we use the spacebar to jump. If we are inverted, then the down key, you know, because it's inverted to confuse the mind. And then as far as the alt key goes, the alternative, it's either, if we're not inverted, we're using up or the alt key. Okay, I'm going to leave these other ones as they are, and we should see that ducking, whether we're inverted or not, should work with jumping, but it's going to be using two different types of ways to figure out which key press it really is, using the power of ternaries. There we go, guys, look at that. We can jump. Oh, it's alt. Oopsie. Alt is still duck. Down is duck. Again, I want to go to an inverse. There's one. There we go. The down key is now jump. Oh, down key was jump. Fantastic. So that works. So we can use that same kind of idea to do the duck key and the duck key alt by just saying if we're not inverted, and we want to use this guy. Otherwise, we're going to use this one. Okay, so that's those guys done. And then alt is saying if we're not inverted, then we use this one. Otherwise, we do this one. Very powerful stuff, actually, right over there. So just like that, look at that. We've removed all those lines of code, reduced it now so far. Let's keep going. Maybe there's other things we can improve, maybe not, who knows. But so far, at least we know we don't need those scripts. The game is still running as it was before, and we're using fewer lines of code. If place meaning xy plus 1 object block, and we're touching the ground, our vertical speed is 0, jumping is false, falling is false. If we're not doing the duck key and not duck key alt, then ducking is false. So here we can also improve this by taking this completely, because remember this returns a true false, right? So what's the inverse? We've got to think about, get your logical cap on. You've got to think to yourself, okay, well, ducking means I'm not ducky, and what we do is, here's a cool logical thing to think about. If we've got an if statement that has an and in it, right? Think about the inverse of that. It becomes an or. So this would evaluate to saying, well, I can't just take not and not in here, because now that's not correct, right? Because that's going to evaluate to true, which is not what we want our value to be. We want it to actually spit it out as false, even though we came in here needing this to be true. So instead, if we're removing the if statement, we now need to say, take that logic, put it in here, but now we need to invert it. So let's get rid of the wrapping. And here we need to say, you could say not, which is the easy inversion, but that's just hard to read in every way. So instead here we're going to say we're ducking if they use the duck key or they use the duck key alt. Very straightforward, right? And even it reads properly. If I'm using any of the duck keys, then I'm actually going to be ducking, and we can put that right over there. Okie dokie. What's next? If the player wants to jump key or jump key alt and not duck key, and then here again we can, instead of saying not or, we can just say and we can put not, and we don't need to wrap all this stuff. Okay. So if we jump key or jump key alt and we're not duck key and not duck key alt, then we want to jump, and we're going to do some jumping over there. So as long as we don't push the jump key and the duck key at the same time, it's going to say it's time to jump so long as we're touching the ground. So again, as we refactor, let's fire it up just in case we make a mistake, because there we go. What happens if we push both? That's cool. So if you push both keys at the same time, it's going to favor... Oh, no, now I'm inverted. It's going to favor a duck. Depends on how quickly you push them. That's pretty cool. You can do like a half jump. Okay, so that worked too. That's a bit cleaner. Okay, now check this out. I wonder if we can improve this guy even. If ducking, then our vertical speed increases by gravity times 4. It gets a little bit more complex here, saying otherwise if we're not ducking... Okay, maybe let's leave that one for now. We can probably improve it, but I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. If we're jumping, then as long as our speed is less than 0, then we're still jumping, because remember this becomes negative vertical speed when we're falling down. Because, well, it's actually negative going up, isn't it? Because the top left is the 0, 0 coordinate. Otherwise, we're not jumping, but we're actually falling. So let's see if we can we change that. So jumping goes true if v speed is less than 0. So if I just take that and put that over there, technically that does both of these, because if it's not, then it's going to return the false, which is the else of this. And because if v speed is less than 0 is returning true, which is the same as the value I want to put in here, we can just slap that straight in, right? So that gets rid of that guy too. And then here we're saying falling is true, which was on the else. So falling is going to be equal to v speed greater than 0. Whoopsie, because it's the opposite. Or essentially you could just say not jumping if we want, but it's okay. Let's just make sure the clarity's in there. So we get rid of all that. And now if you wanted to go further beyond this, you could say that, see, because what this does is it either says you're jumping, therefore you're still jumping, or it's saying you're jumping, therefore you're changing from jumping to falling, right? So technically we don't even need this one, because if we're already jumping, as long as we're not changing the jumping again, because presumably our vertical speed is still less than 0 because it's negative going up towards the 0, 0 coordinate, we can get rid of that. And instead we can say if we're jumping, then we want to maybe change the falling property if our v speed changes to the opposite direction. So we could say that we're falling if we're jumping and our v speed is greater than 0, and then here we could set jumping presumably to false, if we're jumping, and then, well, I'm going to invert this actually. It's less than. See, now we can get rid of this if statement completely. Boom, bada bang. How about them apples? Okay, so what is this saying? Jumping, no duck key and no duck key alt. So now technically, because where's jumping used again? Okay, well let's save and let's see what happens. If it doesn't let us fall down to the ground again, look at that. Alt. Oh, that's duck. Oh, spacebar. We can go inverted. Ooh. Oh, gonna mess with my mind. Spacebar should be duck. Always gets you in the end. That worked. That really did work. See, now we can, as we progress through this refactoring, we can identify places where we're kind of changing the same variables. We've got to keep in mind though that each one of these pieces of code, perhaps the ones that we can't refactor too much because they might already be in their simplistic form, they are relying on some of these properties being in a state as soon as they're executed. So for example, these two here are setting the precedent that says, well, I'm about to do something. I'm going to do something because of a key press. And then these guys say, okay, well, based on the fact that you're doing something because of a key press, I'm going to affect how you move, your speed. And then later on, we're going to say, then we say again, okay, well, at this point in time, I'm using this to determine what your speed was after that action, because it might have changed, because now we're changing sprites and whatnot here. So let's keep going. Maybe there's some stuff down here with the sprites that we can refactor. So if we're jumping or falling, and then here we're saying if it's the B day, then we sprite is that, otherwise sprite index that. So again, we can change this and get rid of this nested if. We're going to say sprite index, let's start with our outcome, equals, and basically it's this, because that's the first if, and global B day. See? And again, that results in a true false. And then we can say, well, if that's true, which is the same as saying if this and this, then equals this. Again, ternary. Or if it's this and not this, then we have something else. Understand? Now, I'm going to comment this one up because it might be a bit more complex here, because I see there's more stuff lower down. So this might conflict a bit because there are various different types of sprites that we can do at different states. So let's just keep that in mind, because we're going to be applying something very similar in here, where we say sprites index equals ducking and birthday. Then we want to use this guy, otherwise we want to use this guy. I just want to make sure that these don't contradict each other, and then this script is going to have a bit of a battle with which one is true. So let's just comment that out. Now we've got image speed equals 2, but I've noticed there's another one down here, so maybe we can merge those two together. And then this guy's saying if you're not jumping and you're not falling and you're not ducking, then it assumes you're running, in which case the image speed is 2. So again, let's say sprite index equals, let's grab all of these, paste them in, and here we want to say and, again, global birthday. It would be really neat if we just run this in the end and it's the same. Sometimes it works like that, eh? And other times you have to kind of take a step back and figure out where one's gone too far with refactoring. It's easy to go down rabbit holes and change the extremes. So you got to gauge whether something should be, well, just because it can be refactored doesn't mean it should, because it can affect other pieces of code and make other situations even harder. So you got to think about readability and maintainability, especially if you're working on a project that has a lot of people involved. If you actually get into a position where you've got multiple developers, think about their skill levels and think to yourselves, well, I mean, they should know about all these things, but if they may not, is your refactoring causing a positive change, or is it just confusing things? Because it's a bit of an art when it comes to it. But where possible, it is a good idea to do some proper refactoring, especially if newer, more efficient techniques are available. So we noticed that image speed was supposed to be 2 for this condition and these conditions, and I don't think we said much about it elsewhere. So here I'm just going to say image speed equals, and again we can wrap all these together. So if we're ducking, or I want to put these in brackets, all of these guys, then I'm going to say 2, otherwise I'm going to set it to whatever it was before. That's kind of just saying, well, if this condition, set it to, otherwise just keep it whatever it was before, leave it at the same. Okay, fingers crossed, moment of truth, let's see what happens. It could just explode. Oh, look, okay. We're jumping, but our sprites are bugged. Oh, except that one works. Okay, so what's actually happening is what I thought. These little bits in the ternary don't properly express they don't properly express the situation or the state, which means that this is contradicting or conflicting with these and this one, which is saying, well, I don't know what I'm doing. So now it's always, I think, setting it to run, and then also because of this, the speed is kind of setting itself back to 0. So we're kind of sliding about. So let's actually go back to the top here. Maybe we can't go so far as to eliminate the ifs completely, because then we're going to have like nested ternaries, and that's going to look a little messy, because you could have like var a equals and then here we have our condition question mark, and then here inside you could put another condition question mark. How weird is that? That's a bit mind-blowing, right? But let's try explain it out here. Var a equals 10, and let's say var b equals 20, and then we want to say var c equals if a is greater than 5. But now you want to say, but what about this guy? This also needs to be in a condition, but only if a is greater than 5. And what you could do is you could now say, okay, well, if that's true, go into a second condition, which now says b greater than 10. And then here you can say, well, if this one's true and this one's true, then c could equal 100. Otherwise, we could say c will equal, I don't know, minus 100. And does that work? It's a little confusing. We mustn't forget to question mark true, true, false. Does this need another one? I wonder if GameMaker can even do that. Oh, it did. Hectic. So you can nest these. Now this is very dangerous. You can see how terrible this is to read. Absolutely horrible to read. But yes, if true, then I want to do another if. It's like an if wrapped in an if. You know, so only do b greater than 10. Check if that's true. If a is greater than 5. If this is false, so for example, if I said a is greater than 50, which obviously it isn't, then it's going to skip this. But remember, this is this whole bit here. And it's going to jump all the way to this guy, and that's the else condition of the first dude. So just watch out. If possible, using ternaries, try to do them as simple as possible. And like, for example, what you could do is, in this case, you could perhaps even just move this b greater than 10 into this first condition, because then you wouldn't need the second like nested ternary situation. So that's a bit of a thing over there. Read up about that if you'd like. It's quite interesting. But here, for example, we can simplify this bit at least, and then leave our wrapper to separate these three checks for setting the sprite. So here we can say this guy, and we can use this birthday condition as our single uniform condition, because within the scope of this line, by the time we get in here, we know it's only an either or, which makes it a very simple ternary expression. So we're going to say that question mark this one, else this one, get rid of all that. And now we can actually get rid of that brace, make that simple, like there. And let's do, okay, so that's this guy, he's gone, a little bit better. Let's do the next guy. Again, we want to get rid of that. And it's this one. Let's get that in. Put that there. Now we also don't have to worry about our image speed, so that solves that problem too. Get rid of that. Fantastic. And we've got two statements in there, so I'm going to leave the braces. And then let's go in here. Let's get rid of that. And we can grab this kind of story, put it in there. put that there, that over there, get rid of all of this. Boom. Okay, so bear with me, but I think that has greatly simplified the script. So we used to have 4 or 5 scripts and there was probably over 100 lines of code. And now we've changed it to no scripts because they're not really necessary, and we're at 71. I'm going to start this up and hopefully we don't skate around. Oh, look at that, the little legs. The little legs are going. We can duck, we can jump, there's alt keys, there's, oopsie, spacebar is the other one. Duck, up. I want to see, I want to get to, there we go. There we go, inverted. Oh, what's the other one? Keep forgetting. So that did the trick. Look at that, everyone. We greatly reduced the code complexity. We've introduced ternary expressions, which I'm not sure if the older version of GameMaker Studio 2 actually supported, but we see that this one does. So that's a happy little discovery. I hope you found this tutorial educational and helpful. The project files will be in the description. So if you want to expand on this infinite runner, I would suggest you use this part of the tutorial series to do that from, because it's a lot more centralized. The code's a little bit easier to follow. There's fewer nested if statements. We're using better technologies. There's a bit of refactoring knowledge going in here, and you're learning about new things too. So thanks for joining me. If you want to support this channel, please check out my Patreon campaign. I really do appreciate the support. Subscribers on that platform will get videos like this a couple days early, and we also interact in all kinds of ways on Patreon. So as always, links are in the description. Until next time, happy coding, and I'll see you then.